Have you ever had one of those quiet moments where you stop and think, am I really doing okay? Maybe you're sipping your coffee in the early morning, looking out the window, and you catch yourself feeling calm. Not ecstatic, not thrilled, just peaceful. And maybe that surprises you, because for so long, you've been carrying so much. Grief, regret, loss. And yet somehow, without fireworks or grand announcements, something inside has shifted. You're not falling apart the way you used to. You're not as angry, or anxious, or afraid. Here's a thought that might stop you in your tracks. You may already be far more healed than you think. We often picture healing as a big dramatic breakthrough, some kind of emotional finish line where everything suddenly makes sense. But real healing doesn't usually look like that. It's quiet, subtle. It creeps in the way spring slowly replaces winter, one soft breeze, one blooming flower at a time. And if you're watching this right now, chances are you've done more inner work than you realize. Because healing isn't about perfection or pretending everything's fine. It's about how you show up differently, how you feel differently, even when you're not quite sure why. Today we're going to talk about 6 powerful signs that prove you're further along than you might believe. These aren't dramatic, flashy changes. They're small shifts with big meaning. And once you know how to spot them, you may just start to see yourself in a whole new light. So let's start with one of the most overlooked signs of deep healing. You can be alone without feeling lonely. Now, that might sound simple on the surface, but it's actually huge. Because for a long time, being alone might have been difficult. You may have filled your days with noise, with distractions, with anything to avoid being still. Maybe you didn't even realize it at the time. You just kept busy. TV always on, phone calls, errands, chores. Because silence brought up feelings you didn't want to face. Memories you had pushed down. Questions about yourself, your life, your past. But something's changed. You don't feel that same urgency to escape yourself. You can sit quietly in your favorite chair without background noise and just be. You can breathe in the stillness, maybe even enjoy it. That's not small, that's profound. Because it means you've made peace with the one person you can never escape, yourself. You've stopped running. You've stopped judging yourself so harshly. You've accepted that you are human, complicated, imperfect, and worthy of love and kindness anyway. That's what healing looks like. It's not about always feeling happy. It's about being okay with being with you, being your own safe space, being your own companion. And when you can do that, when solitude no longer feels like punishment but like peace, you've crossed an invisible milestone that many people never reach. Let's talk about another powerful sign, one that shows up so quietly you might not notice it unless you really pay attention. The past no longer holds its fangs. We all have triggers, those moments that hit a nerve that seem to pull us back into old pain. Maybe it used to be someone raising their voice, or being ignored, or hearing a certain tone. Whatever it was, it could wreck your whole day. Sometimes, your whole week. It would take you down into a spiral of emotions, anger, shame, sadness, and it felt like being dragged underwater. But now, something's different. That same situation might happen again. Someone says something thoughtless. Someone forgets to call. But instead of spiraling, you pause. You feel a flicker of emotion, sure, but it doesn't sweep you away. You breathe, you reflect, you respond instead of reacting. And just like that, the past doesn't have its claws in you anymore. Now let's be clear, that doesn't mean the old wound has vanished. It's still part of your story, but it's no longer running the show. You're not stuck in it. You're not ruled by it. You've gained a sense of awareness. You can say to yourself, that reminds me of something old, but this is now, and I'm not that same person anymore. That's healing, and it's powerful. Think back for a moment. A year ago, 5 years ago, 10, would you have handled things the same way? Or have you grown in ways you've never given yourself credit for? Because this is where we often trip ourselves up, We're so focused on what's still wrong, we forget to notice what's no longer hurting. We forget to celebrate what no longer controls us. Maybe criticism doesn't send you into a shame spiral anymore. Maybe you can disagree with someone and not feel like your whole identity is under attack. Maybe you've stopped rehearsing old arguments in your head. Maybe forgiveness, real forgiveness, is starting to feel possible. That's not denial. That's not forgetting. That's your mind and heart saying, we don't have to live in the past anymore. It's a sign that your nervous system has settled, that your soul has softened, that you're no longer reliving what happened, but living from who you've become. And I want to pause here and say, you deserve to be proud of that, because so many people carry their past like a heavy coat they never take off. But you've started to put it down, piece by piece, layer by layer, and you didn't even realize it. And now, maybe you're wondering, is it really that simple? Can sitting alone in peace or responding differently to a trigger really be signs of healing? Yes, and they're some of the most important ones. Because real healing doesn't usually come in the form of huge life changes. It comes in moments that seem small, but are actually monumental. It's when you stop picking the same kind of fight with your partner. When you can drive past a place that once broke your heart and feel okay. When you wake up in the morning and don't feel that familiar dread in your chest. When you smile at yourself in the mirror, not because everything is perfect, but because you've made it this far. Healing shows up in your quiet strength, in your ability to rest, in the way you talk to yourself when no one's listening. It shows up in your softness, your grace, your ability to carry your story without letting it carry you away. And it's okay if you didn't notice it happening. That's often how it works. Your heart doesn't send you a newsletter when it's mended. Your mind doesn't ring a bell when it stops obsessing. Your soul doesn't post a sign that says, we've turned a corner. But one day you look back and realize, hey, I'm not who I used to be. I've changed. I've grown. I've healed. Even if it was slow. Even if it was quiet. Even if nobody else noticed. You did. And that matters. So if you've ever doubted your progress, if you've ever looked in the mirror and thought, I'm still broken, I want you to think again, look again, feel again. Because chances are your healing is already here. Let's keep going, because what we've started uncovering together might just shift the way you see yourself. There's a kind of healing that doesn't look like healing at all. Not on the surface. It doesn't always mean you smile more or cry less. Sometimes it shows up as a strange new ability, the ability to hold two opposing thoughts and not fall apart. You see, the world often pushes us to pick sides. We're told to be either strong or soft, happy or grieving, confident or humble. It's as if you can't be both. But if you've been doing any kind of inner work over the years, you've probably already discovered. Life isn't that black and white. You can feel grateful for your blessings and still long for what you've lost. You can love someone dearly and still get frustrated with them. You can feel proud of how far you've come and still wish you'd done some things differently. And none of those truths cancel each other out. Now that might not sound extraordinary, but it is. Because the ability to live with contradiction without needing to force clarity is a powerful sign of psychological maturity. It means you've become resilient enough to live in the gray. Think about it. Years ago, maybe things had to make perfect sense for you to feel secure. If someone disappointed you, it meant they weren't trustworthy. If you had doubts, it meant you were doing something wrong. If you were sad, it meant you weren't okay. But now you can sit with those messy, tangled feelings. You can love and hurt at the same time. You can be sure and uncertain. You don't need everything to line up in neat little boxes. You can hold it all. That's not just healing, that's strength. And it shows up in little moments. Like when you have a hard conversation and you don't rush to fix it or smooth it over. You just let the other person have their truth and you hold yours. Or when you reflect on your past, not with regret or denial, but with understanding. You can say, I did the best I could with what I knew. and mean it. You're no longer trying to be perfect. You're trying to be whole. That's the difference. Wholeness doesn't mean always feeling good. It means making space for all of it. The light and the shadow, the joy and the sorrow, the wisdom and the worry, because all of it belongs. And when you stop needing to resolve the tension between them, something surprising happens. You feel more peaceful, not less. This isn't about giving up or being passive. It's about growing up into your full humanity. And it's one of the clearest signs that your healing has gone deep. Now let me tell you about another place where healing leaves its mark, your dreams. And I'm not just talking about your hopes and goals, though we'll get to that. I mean the actual dreams you have when you're sleeping. I know this might sound a little out there, but stay with me. Our dreams are one of the most honest mirrors we have. They show us what our conscious mind can't or won't always admit. And while not everyone remembers their dreams, for those who do, they can be a powerful way to track your inner world. When we're carrying unhealed wounds, our dreams can be dark, confusing, even frightening. Maybe you've had those nights, dreams of being chased, trapped, lost, waking up with your heart pounding, feeling unsettled the rest of the day. That's not random. That's your unconscious mind processing pain it hasn't yet fully digested. But as healing begins to take hold, those dreams start to change. They might still be intense, but they're different. Instead of being trapped, maybe you find a door. Instead of being voiceless, you speak. Instead of being lost, you're on a journey and you're moving forward. You might start dreaming of places you've never seen, people who feel familiar but unknown. You may see yourself helping someone else or being helped. You may find yourself standing in water, climbing stairs, discovering hidden rooms in a familiar house. These symbols aren't just imagination, they're messages. They reflect shifts happening in your psyche, shifts toward integration, toward resolution, toward wholeness. And even if you don't remember the details, pay attention to how you feel when you wake up. If your mornings feel calmer, more grounded, if you feel less haunted by the past, something is happening inside. This is the kind of healing that doesn't show up on a blood test. You can't scan for it. You don't always notice it in the mirror. But it's real. And it's yours. Now maybe you're thinking, well, I don't dream that much anymore. Or, I can't remember the last time I had one. That's okay. Dreams aren't the only measure of healing. But if you do notice changes, less anxiety in your sleep, more peace when you wake, that's something worth noticing. And here's something beautiful. Healing in the unconscious mind doesn't require your full awareness. Your psyche has its own wisdom. It works quietly in the background, while you sleep, while you walk, while you sip your tea on the porch. You don't have to force it. You just have to keep showing up for yourself, honestly and patiently. That's part of what makes healing such a gentle miracle. You don't have to push. You just have to listen, to stay open, to stay curious. You've probably heard the saying, time heals all wounds. But time alone isn't the healer. It's what you do with that time. It's the way you reflect, the way you forgive, the way you return to yourself over and over again. And if your inner world is starting to feel more spacious, even just a little, that means something is working. Even if nobody sees it, even if you can't fully explain it. That's the beauty of healing after 60. It's no longer about proving something to the world. It's not about trophies or praise or comparison. It's about being at peace in your own skin, living in your own rhythm, letting life unfold in its own wise way. And when you stop needing to have all the answers, when you allow yourself to live inside the questions, that's when you know. Your soul has grown quiet and strong. So whether you've noticed changes in how you feel, how you dream, or how you handle the contradictions of life, take a moment to honor that. You've come a long way, and the path ahead is still full of meaning. There's a kind of quiet that settles in after years of inner work. It's not the silence of avoidance or loneliness, but the kind of stillness that feels like home. If you've ever had that moment, maybe sitting on your porch, the sun starting to dip, a breeze rolling through, and you suddenly feel okay for no particular reason, that's what deep healing feels like. Not a celebration, not a grand revelation, just peace. And one of the surest signs you've reached that place is this: you've stopped fighting with yourself. You might remember a time when your inner voice was your harshest critic. Maybe you'd catch yourself thinking, "I shouldn't have said that," or "Why do I always do this?" over and over again. It was like living with a shadow that never gave you a break. But at some point, without even realizing it, the voice got quieter, softer, maybe even kinder. You began to see that all those parts of yourself you used to judge so harshly, the fear, the anger, the jealousy, the regret, they weren't proof that something was wrong with you. They were just parts of being human. You didn't conquer your shadow. You sat down with it, and you listened. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. You started to understand that denying your darker feelings doesn't make you stronger. It makes you split. And when you split, you spend your energy trying to hide parts of yourself from yourself. But healing invites you to do something braver. It invites you to integrate, to bring everything into the light, to say, "Yes, I can be stubborn sometimes, and scared, and I've made mistakes, but I'm still worthy of compassion." That shift, from judgment to understanding, is one of the most powerful inner transformations there is. It means you're no longer at war with who you are. You've made peace with your past, your imperfections, your complexity. Now don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean you act on every impulse or excuse bad behavior. It means you recognize what's there so you can make conscious choices. You've stopped trying to be perfect and started being whole. And that changes everything. Because when you stop fighting yourself, you also stop fighting others in the same way. You stop expecting people to be flawless, to never disappoint you, to always meet your needs. You start meeting people where they are, flaws and all, just like you've learned to meet yourself. And in that space, relationships soften. Communication opens up. Grace begins to grow. So if you've noticed that you don't beat yourself up the way you used to, if you can admit when you're wrong without spiraling into shame, if you can sit with uncomfortable emotions and not run from them, that's not just maturity, that's healing in motion. Now let's talk about something that might surprise you, especially if life has felt a little simpler, a little quieter lately. But this sign might be the most beautiful one of all. Life starts to feel meaningful again. Not in the way it did when you were chasing big dreams or building a career or raising a family. It's different now. It's deeper, quieter, more sacred. You might not be looking for purpose in accomplishments anymore. Instead, it shows up in small moments. The way your grandchild's laugh fills the room. The way your garden responds to your hands. The comfort of your favorite mug in the morning. The way the air feels right before it rains. Meaning is no longer something you have to earn. It's something you sense. You might find yourself drawn to things you never had time for before. Painting, writing, helping others, or simply being still. You feel more connected to something larger than yourself, even if you can't quite name it. Nature, spirit, beauty, time. It's all speaking to you now in a language your younger self might have missed. You've begun to notice that even the hard moments hold lessons. That even your suffering shaped you in ways you're grateful for. That the people who left you, the jobs that didn't work out, the struggles you barely survived, all of it formed the person you are now. And that person is wise, gentle, real. Maybe you've stopped asking, "What's next?" and started asking, "What matters now?" You're not running, you're not chasing. You're just here, present, engaged, alive. That, my friend, is the ultimate sign of healing. Not that your life looks perfect, but that you are finally able to live it. Not just endure it, not just manage it, but actually be in it. And maybe you didn't even realize that shift had happened. Maybe you thought you were just getting older, slowing down. But in truth, you were settling into yourself. You were growing into your spirit. You were becoming who you were always meant to be. That's what healing looks like after 60. Not flashy, not loud, but deep, steady, whole. So let's take a breath together and just reflect for a moment. If you can be alone without feeling lonely, if the past doesn't haunt you the way it used to, if you can hold two opposing thoughts in your heart and still feel okay, if your dreams or your quiet moments have started to feel lighter, if you've stopped fighting with yourself and started embracing your full humanity, if life has begun to shimmer again, even in the smallest ways, then take it in. You've healed more than you think. You don't need a certificate, or a therapist to confirm it, or a moment where everything suddenly makes sense. You just need to notice what's already true. And if you're thinking, but I still have bad days, I still get triggered, I still fall into old patterns sometimes, that's okay. Healing isn't about never struggling. It's about how you return to yourself afterward. How you speak to yourself when things get tough. How you choose to keep going. And you have. You've already come so far. So today, I want to encourage you to pause and honor that. Celebrate it, not with a party or an announcement, but with a deep breath, a soft smile, a quiet thank you to yourself for doing the work, whether you knew you were doing it or not. And if you're comfortable, I'd love for you to share something in the comments. Maybe it's a moment where you realized you'd grown. Maybe it's a sign you recognize now that you didn't before. Your story might be the exact reminder someone else needs today. We're all walking this journey in different ways, but no one should feel alone on the path. And if this video spoke to you, if it helped you see yourself more clearly, more kindly, please give it a like. Subscribe to our channel, Strong Elderly Life, for more content designed to support your journey toward healing, growth, and living fully at every stage of life. Because you're not done becoming. You're not too old for transformation. You're not too far gone for joy. You're exactly where you need to be. Here's to living your best life, fully human, beautifully whole, and more healed than you ever thought possible.